Thank you for tuning to Good Morning Kenya. We are talking about disaster preparedness. My name is Mike Migwi, and already in studio, my guests are already in studio, and I'm joined by Engineer David Kimingi on my far left. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, viewers.
I'm also joined by Engineer Phyllis Njoki. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. And
also Mr. Patrick Wambulwa, who is also an engineer. Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Thank you for making. Yes, thank you for making time. Now, let's get right into it. There's a lot that is happening owing to the heavy downpour that the country is experiencing. Let me start with you, Engineer David. What is the role of engineers in terms of disaster preparedness and with respect, especially when it comes to floods?
Okay, thank you, Mike. First and foremost, I'd like to say I'm here to represent the EBK, which is a body mandated by the Act of Parliament to register engineers and firms and to regulate the engineering profession. So, going to your question, the factors which may be contributing to what you are saying could be because of rapid urbanization and change in land use. In some cases, we have poor design and construction, and also lack of required maintenance to our infrastructures. So when all these are addressed, the impact of flood will not be as severe as is being presented at the moment. Thank you.
Well, a lot is happening actually, and even in today's newspapers, there is a lot that is talking about floods. When it comes, especially the Standard newspaper is talking about, on the first page is talking about the deluge of death. Residents near Kijabe Dam were warned about rapidly rising waters, but no action was taken, and thereafter an entire village was caught unawares at night as flood waters swept everything on its way. And that story, you will find it on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 6th page of the Standard newspaper. Of course, there's a lot of destructions, and at least 45 people have been confirmed to have perished in that tragedy, in Migwi Dam tragedy, and death toll is likely to rise. There's a lot of pictures showing the level of destructions, homes destroyed, cars, buses, and a lot of people affected in these floods. And also this story is fleshed out on the 2nd, 4th, and 6th page of the Standard, and even roads have been cut off. The trail of death and destruction as heavy rains pound the country. The accidents captured in videos that have since gone viral occurred some minutes before 7 p.m., making it difficult for the rescue team to trace the victims because it was dark. The Kenya Red Cross regional manager Musa Hassan said the schoolgirl was among 3 people whose bodies were found floating on the water. And also the same stories of death owing to the a dam in Kijabe bursting its banks when residents of Jerusalem and Kamushiri villages in Migwi retired to bed on Sunday night after a day spent attending church service with loved ones, visiting with family and friends, or preparing children for school. They looked forward to a new busy week, but unbeknownst to them, tragedy lay in wait uphill in a gully that had collected massive flood waters. Engineer Phyllis, I don't know, what's your take on this, and in as far as our preparedness to such disasters is concerned?
I think as engineers, it's actually very sad because we create solutions for people. Our work is to build houses, build roads, build water systems, which enhance the life of people. And so when we see this kind of destruction, it's very sad. And so on one hand, I see the lack of adequate infrastructure that sometimes, for example, right now we're experiencing floods which are above the normal range because those people have lived there for many years, and in this case the flood is above the range, and the infrastructure in that area to handle the flood is inadequate. I think there was a small dam there which burst its banks, and it was not adequate. So one, this could be due to lack of adequate funding to have enough. To have adequately prepared structures or adequate construction of the required structures. And so this could be a funding issue. Another issue is also the maintenance of the infrastructure. Sometimes we have good infrastructure, but constructed in the 1980s. And up to today, that sometimes no improvements and no maintenance has been carried out. Due to lack of funding or due to lack of prioritization. And this again affects our preparedness of the people. As engineer said, the population is growing, there's more pressure on the land. The same dam built in the 80s was serving X number of people, today is maybe serving 20X the same number of people. And another aspect of preparedness is that we design the systems, and there's also the way the citizens interact with the infrastructure. How do people own this infrastructure that we are doing, that has been constructed there? Are the same people, sometimes we see people around the infrastructure, the ones who are destroying the infrastructure, because at that point they do not see the large purpose of it, or they do not know how to maintain it. The communities do not own the infrastructure, they feel it's a government thing, we don't know how to maintain it, and so this affects our preparedness as a people. I think the last point I would say on this is just information and preparedness, that as much as people know if this thing looks like it's going to burst, no one really knows what can we do, who is going to be called, what measures are we supposed to take, should we evacuate, at what point should we evacuate, how early. So those kind of systems are lacking largely in most parts. Yeah.
Yes. Engineer Wambulwa, still on this, it's not the first time we are experiencing a dam bursting. There was a time when somewhere in Solai a dam burst. Are we seeing a case of poor workmanship when it comes to infrastructure? Engineer Wambulwa.
Thank you, Mike. Maybe first we would like to say pole to the families that have lost loved ones and that are displaced. I would like to say that also we are in a disaster situation, and when you are in a disaster situation like we are, the priority is rescue. So at the moment, because of the event of flooding, priority comes to rescue and recovery of maybe the properties and the bodies that are lost. So these are a priority. Why are we seeing a case of poor workmanship? It could be so for some if the infrastructure are fairly new. But I think like in the case of Kijabe, it looks like it is an old structure. So old structures need maintenance. New structures need to be done to good standard. So Solai could be a case of what happened in Solai, I think it was 2018, that could be a case of poor workmanship. But the Kijabe case looks to be an old infrastructure that has not been well maintained.
What about the drainage within the city or in areas like Nairobi and Machakos? What about the drainage? Do we have enough drainage, or are they, the way they are constructed, are they constructed in a way that they can handle excess flooding?
Flood management is broader than stormwater drainage, but stormwater drainage is one of the solutions to flood management. So we need an aspect of respecting natural water courses so that people are not encroaching on natural water courses. We respect the distance allowed from the highest watermark. We don't build into the river corridor. That is an aspect that should be respected. We need an element of forecasting the amount of rainfalls that can come and the quantities of water that can flow in the stream, and therefore design adequate stormwater drain. What Nairobi has are what you could call road side drains, but trunk stormwater drains, these have not been done adequately. There have been master plan studies for stormwater drain in Nairobi, but they have not been implemented with the due diligence. So there is need to invest in updating these master plans and investing in construction of new stormwater drains in Nairobi, as well as respecting natural water courses and also avoiding to divert some of those courses.
Engineer David, from an engineering standpoint, why are we always in this cycle? Every time we have like floods, we are having areas where people are experiencing the effects more than other areas. But still, you see in a case where we are not fully prepared. Why are we in this cycle always?
Just speak from where my colleague Engineer Patrick has reached. For any town, we need to have an urban development plan. And in the urban development plan, that's where you zone your town. You know this area will be low residential area, high density area. You'll have area for recreation. You'll have area for repair area for water. And in the case of Nairobi, we have fallen short of that. As he has alluded, the master plan for example, for water in Nairobi, it was last, the study was done, I think first one 1974. We did a review of that in 1994. And from there, nothing much has been done, and not much of investment has been given to stormwater. Simply because that is not an event which occurs every day. So in the budgetary cycle, it is not given a big priority compared to other infrastructures of highways and potable water. So also there's a lot of pressure on land in Nairobi. You remember, like when the master plan for Nairobi was done in 1994, Kireresho area was a low density area, the Lavington area. There are no high-rise building. Now, if you go to Lavington, the land use has changed. What that means, you have converted the area which was largely occupied by trees and vegetation. Now you have put concrete on it. So when you do that, you increase the amount of storm that goes to our roads. And our road network is not designed to take that type of storm, because water should naturally be able to seep gradually in the soil and be retained by the trees' roots, so that it is released gradually with time, so without much impact. Look at the catchment around Nairobi. When you do deforestation, you affect the land cover. The storm which you experience in Nairobi comes as far up as from the Kikuyu escarpment to Nairobi. People in, for example, in Mlolongo or wherever, they'll get the impact of the rain that has come from Ngong and the Kikuyu escarpment, because the land use in that area has changed. It was largely agriculture. Kiambu was largely agriculture. There was coffee, and it was retaining the soil. Now we have turned Kiambu, outskirts of Nairobi, to residential. All that water is being directed to the city. So that's why now you see the impact becoming more severe. But that is not say that the design standards that we use for stormwater, if they are implemented, we foresee those things, a change in land use, we have to predict within reasonable that this will be the land use coming in the next 30, 50 years. And also, we design with factor of safety. So, provided the riparian was clear, and the riparian in Nairobi, we are talking about the river valleys. All the river valleys, Madare Valley and whatever, those are the river valleys, which ideally is a place for aquatic life and water path. So when you put structures there, and nature has a way of fighting back, and what you are saying here is nature is fighting back, and water is reclaiming their rightful position in the city. Thank you.
I'd love to hear from you, Engineer Phyllis, how engineers, in such cases where we have dams bursting, stormwater causing havoc, how can engineers work with the local communities and even the government in mitigating such risk and even in prevention of such?
All right. As engineer was talking about the design standards. So what the design standards require, if we're designing, say, it's a gated community, 100 houses. So we will design your stormwater for the usual everyday rain, but then we will also look at an emergency or a flood situation, say a flood which happens 1 in 50 years or once in 100 years. This means something like maybe all the rain you would get in 1 month. What if it comes in 1 day? Which is, like, for example, what happened in Dubai. They said it was a 1 in 75 year flood. So that is part of our standards, and that is part of our design. So we will design that, and you will have adequate systems to remove it. And so where the challenge comes in is that as we've designed your plot, your nice houses, and they have the stormwater out, this now has to interact with public systems. This water has to go to public water courses, roadside drains, a river somewhere, a riparian land, which the owner of the land may not have adequate control over what is happening upstream or downstream. And so this is where it becomes a community issue, that the engineer has a jurisdiction on what they are doing on the design, but there's a larger way that the community needs to be involved. So this starts again from government, from there are laid down guidelines on how the riparian is supposed to be managed, on what can be constructed, how can this be maintained. So you find that in some areas there are some private citizens who will perhaps put a small dam or put something if they want to direct water to their homes or their farms, put some temporary measures maybe for security, and put some sort of barriers in the rivers, especially in the city. We've seen that people who put, where there's a huge culvert, then they put some barriers, so all this interaction of other people putting in private solutions for other things in water courses is what now brings the problem down the road, because this is a shared infrastructure. And so on year 1, it might be fine, year 2, it might be fine, but on the year when we need that whole infrastructure for flood, then it's not available. And then it's not something that can be changed at that point. So as engineers, one of the ways which we do this is, in our designs, we always involve the environmentalists and sociologists. It's actually a law that every project must have NEMA approval. And so really it's following the standards and what has been approved for a project, because every project will have an environmental impact assessment and will say, if you build these houses here, all this stormwater will come to this river, and so this river needs to be maintained at this level. And so those are the things which need to be implemented by the larger community. I think there's also the aspect of maintenance and information, that when a change of user board comes up in the neighborhood, that the neighborhood associations are robust in listening and in finding out more information. Who is this? What are they constructing? How is this happening? If a neighbor blocks a certain river course, then it's important that there's a neighborhood association, there's the community is awake and alive, because sometimes we find that people are not willing to engage unless it's directly outside my house. But it's important that we engage as communities, and these communities even start from Twitter, even just someone taking a photo and putting it on Twitter and asking, who is this, what is happening? It begins that ownership by the community. And again, interactions with the authorities, that if there's an NEMA approval, is this being followed? Yeah, so I think it's that interaction from the developer to the authorities who are enforcing, and to the public who also just take an interest to the larger environment around their own environment and their own water courses, roadways, and public infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Engineer Wambulwa, is it a case of too little, too late that we are seeing these things? Because, of course, there are early warning signs given by the weatherman. Is it a case of ignoring our early warning systems?
It could be partly yes, but we should also appreciate that there are issues called climate change, and therefore, as we go forward, there will be greater variation in the amount of rainfall that is received. Droughts could be more severe. You might experience maybe storms or cyclones in areas which normally do not have them, like I think Southern Africa 2 years ago experienced a cyclone, events which normally would not happen in the African continent. So it's not too little, too late, but we need to invest more in planning. And planning is envisaged at different levels. Both the Fiscal Planning Act and the County Government Act envisage devolved units to be planning authorities. Therefore, you need at county level, you are doing integrated development plan, but when you use that word integrated, it means you are integrating something that is done at lower level. So you need sub-county plans, you need ward level plans, and village level plan, or in the context of Nairobi, residential area plans. So the investment in this type of planning at lower level is an aspect we are missing. And that should then be integrated at county level to fit into the budget, county budget and national budget, so that you have the right infrastructure in anticipation of the rainfall that will come.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break.
Sorry.
No, make the point before you go.
Yes. And I was saying that at that planning, it involves beyond engineers.
Yes.
You will need engineers, but you have to go ranging from the Kenya Space Agency to help you in satellite and remote sensing information, to Kenya Meteorological Department, through the Water Resource Authority for River Gauging Station, and many organizations that are involved to get you a good plan.
Yes. We'll continue with this conversation after this short break. Right, this is a Good Morning Kenya. We are talking about disaster preparedness from an engineering standpoint. And one of the things that are coming out from these dailies is the aspect of structural integrity of buildings and some roads. We have seen bridges being swept away, roads being cut off. How does it speak to the structural integrity of these structures, and how can they be enhanced to withstand extreme cases like we are facing right now? Engineer David.
Thank you, Mike. First and foremost, when you talk about a building or a bridge, one thing the public should know that it is not done by one profession. As you do a building, we'll have the architect who will come and define the functionality of the space and the aesthetic of the building. we'll have a geotechnical engineer who will come and assess the adequacy of that foundation to be able to carry that weight of that building. Then the structural engineer will come and now design for the members that will be able now to transmit the weight of the building to the ground. So it's quite a number of professions. The civil engineers, infrastructure engineer will look at the stormwater drainage around there. Water engineer will look at how the water, potable water will come to the house and the sewage will be evacuated from the house. So as you come with do a building, this required is a lot of professions which are involved. But in most cases, most of the developers, they take shortcut to that. And the approval system in the, unfortunately, the authority of approval of plans lies with the county government. And there's a very little talk with other agency when they are doing the approval. So when you change a land use and you have put a you have introduced that 5-story building where it is not supposed to do, that is good to do because there's pressure for urban people to have houses. But there are things which must be done first for you to come with that structure. You must be able to, what are the enabling infrastructure that you need to put in place before you do that building? You need to make sure there's adequate stormwater drainage, there's adequate water, there's adequate power to that area, the roads are upgraded to be able to take care of the additional traffic that is expected in that area, and so forth. So, and when it comes to the bridges, and the roads, the biggest enemy of a road is water. And therefore, you need to do a study called hydrological study and know how the ground is going to drain across that road. So when you know how much water do you expect under which return period, maybe 100 years return period, how much water do you expect to go at a particular point of the road? And therefore, you're able to size your structure to accommodate that flood. But what you have seen in recently, there are some shortcuts in the study, in the carrying out of feasibility studies. So you have structures which are not properly sized for the flood that is expected there, or there are areas where there's a road, but there's no drainage structure which was put on the road. But I think the case in Garissa, the point where the road breached, ideally we should have had a bridge or a box culvert around that area so that it is able to evacuate the water when it comes. So when water goes there and it finds that it has no way to pass, then it affects the roads. So it goes to the design, which we need, which now the sector players, they need to collaborate and ensure that the designs are properly carried out, and also the construction of it needs to be the quality to make sure that is being constructed to standard needs to be done. Thank you.
Dr. Phyllis, are these floods bringing about or bringing to the fore the level of expertise that is, or lack thereof, that is applied when it comes to building structures, even roads, for accessibility?
I'd say the expertise is there. I think there are many roads which are functioning well, but the truth is there are also others which are not functioning well. And there's always a chance that something was not done correctly. And I always say that's a small percentage, because in construction of a road, there's many other factors. So the design could have been fine, but perhaps the materials which were used, there was a shortcut taken at that point. Perhaps if there was a storm drainage supposed to be this much, then a smaller one was constructed. So the design was correct and the expertise was correct, but at the point of construction, perhaps it was not constructed as required. We are also seeing this, especially now where we're seeing road corridors being expanded, and sometimes this requires land to be purchased, and sometimes adequate land is not available. Perhaps people have already constructed bigger structures or more permanent structures, and they are not able to be demolished or removed. And so sometimes there's compromise in what needs to be done for the infrastructure. But I would say the expertise is there because our design standards are there and they have not changed, and they are used for the function. The roads which are functioning have followed the standards and they are functioning well. So where there's a shortfall in that, I would say it's not a lack of skill, but really perhaps a lack of duty of care for the professionals, and a lack of, again, also a lack of perhaps a workmanship issue during construction. Also, sometimes a lack of adequate logistics. There's not enough land, or sometimes some shortcuts have been taken.
But who is supposed to enforce these standards? Because these are things, especially when it comes to roads, bridges, and all. These are things that are going to be used by the public. Who is supposed to enforce these standards?
So these standards, so the way a project is structured, there's a resident engineer and there's a client, who is usually the government, who has funded this project, and these standards are taken care of and they are required to be there. There's also an approval process for every design, and the designs have passed for the approval process. So where there's a shortcut, it's supposed to be caught at that level of the approval. Yeah. And again, also during the execution, there's constant monitoring and constant review. Yeah. And so that is also the point where it's supposed to be captured.
Engineer Wambulwa, given the situation, what are the alternatives from an engineering standpoint? What are the alternatives that are there in areas where they have been struck by these floods? What are the alternatives that they can explore to mitigate the situation?
Thank you, Mike. Once you have had a disaster and structures have been affected, there has to be investigation to identify what really caused. Was it that the water was too much and therefore exceeded the allowed opening? Was it that the materials that were used at that point are weak? Or was it the structural integrity of that structure? So there is need for each event to be properly investigated. Just like the way if there are crimes done, they should be investigated. So that investigation will inform the best solution how to correct that measure. And for sure, there are solutions. If it was a question of sizing, the openings can be made wider. If it is a question of materials, then you would identify the right materials to be used. Like you mentioned, the thickness of the road surfacing. So if the issues, because that surfacing should be thick enough to kind of stop water penetrating into the road. So if it is the issue of that material, then the right material has to be identified. But I would like to touch on what my colleagues have said. Skills we have, because Kenya is now having in excess of 25,000 engineers, and every year we are producing around 2,500, both those who are studying in Kenya and those who are coming from outside Kenya. So we have the numbers of the engineers that can work for this country. Vision 2030, I think, had a forecast, and the engineers board, the government, there is good investment to achieve the right numbers to steer this country to be a developed country and globally competitive. For roads, there is an update of road design standards and road design manual, which is, I think, might be commissioned this year, and therefore we shall be designing roads in the context of the latest information, and therefore we expect less challenges in the event of rain.
Yes. From what you've said, in the engineering sector, we have over 25,000 as you
Yes,
have said.
over 25,000 who are practicing.
Practicing.
Yeah.
Out of that, how many, or in terms of percentage, how many are consulting engineers?
Those who are fully registered are close to 500 who are registered as consulting engineers.
Yes.
About just below 600.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that number enough to meet the market demands?
I would say we need more because we are also not just serving Kenya, but we serve the East African region and the African region. So we need what we call transition so that those who are graduating can quickly become professional engineers. There is need, like for doctors, every doctor who graduates goes through an internship program to become a professional doctor. Engineers are not supported in this area, and there is a need for government and all stakeholders to support all the 2,500 engineers who are graduating to be supported through an initial program of employment and therefore transition into professional engineer. And because of that lack of investment, you have close to 20,000 graduate engineers who graduated but have not been trained properly to become professional engineers. So this group of 20,000 needs what you would call support so that they are professional engineers. And that means Kenya practically, like within the next 3 years or so, could have close to 20,000 professional engineers. That number is good to drive our industrialization, our infrastructure development, and to make us a globally competitive country as envisioned in Vision 2030.
Yes.
Yeah.
Engineer David, what would you say is the biggest challenge in an engineering perspective now when it comes to preparing for such natural disasters?
I think we need to have to enhance collaboration between the sector players. There are so many sector players. We have NEMA, we have NCA, National Construction Authority, Engineers Board of Kenya, and the developers. They are there. So we need to, these developers, they need to talk more. And as they plan, they prepare their budget for development. So they need to have also a budget for stormwater, for such facilities, and also, most very important, we need a budget for maintenance of the infrastructure. Because once you do a very good structure and you cannot maintain it, then with time, is able to lose its efficiency. Like the problem in Nairobi you have seen, most of it, the first days of the rains, the flood was more severe. Why? Because the drains were not working. So garbage has gone in, you have blocked the drainage system. So unless that is unblocked, the water cannot find its way out. But who is it now responsible for the maintenance? Okay, there's an authority which has done highways. It passes through your settlement area. Who is in charge of solid waste management that goes to block that? That is the local authority. Who is in charge of drainage within the estate? Is the local authority. Are these organizations talking more on how to solve it? No, I think the answer is no. So we need more of that talking within the authorities, and so that they can come with measures to improve on things like stormwater drainage. Yes.
What about water harvesting? How can we enhance our water harvesting capabilities in such cases? Because right now we are experiencing floods. In a few months' time, the sunny season starts. We go back to the cases where the land is dry, but we had rains, we did not harvest waters. How can we enhance our water harvesting capabilities?
If I may help him a little.
Yes.
They say everything has a silver lining. Now that we have a lot of water, it is an opportunity we are missing. With the new administration, the Kenya Kwanza, I think one of the first things that was said was that there will be 100 large dams. So this program to invest in water storage, it's noble and should be fast-tracked so that we have many dams, even beyond 100. A good amount of this water would be stored. And also when we store it, there is the benefit that it will recharge groundwater. And of course, there has been a cry in Nairobi that the water table is dropping, and even those who have their boreholes are running dry. This rain that we are having is an opportunity to recharge the ground. So we need a good planned development that allows green areas that allow water to seep in the ground, and not a question of paving, building every part of my plot and paving everything. Yeah.
Engineer Phyllis, what now can engineers do to help in creating resilient communities in the wake of such disasters? We are talking about matters retrofitting and also adhering to early warning systems. How can we help in building now a resilient community when it comes to such disasters?
Projects being done in the context of community, it's about more ways of effectively engaging the community. I believe that the engineer will take the duty of care to design the adequate structure, but then how does the public interact with it? There was a case which was highlighted a few years ago of a road which had been newly constructed, and then the first time it rained, there was a lot of flooding, but the road is new. And so it was discovered that there's a person who was right on the roadside selling sugarcane, these people who sell sugarcane. Yeah. And that for months he had been putting his solid waste in the drainage. And because it's this covered drainage, nobody had really bothered with it. And so, but the truth is that there were people who were seeing it, but nobody is because it's not my problem, it's not your problem, nobody is bothering with the person doing what he's doing. And so that part of education and that part of having adequate solutions for everything, that the person could be doing that, they don't have adequate solution for solid waste. Where is the solid waste supposed to be managed so that then they have an option, so that then they can leave the stormwater infrastructure to do what it is supposed to do. So there's that part of community awareness, which is done by the engineers during projects, at the project implementation or design stage, but also should be further continued after, as by the county or by the people who are managing the project, that a project is not just install and forget, that a road once it's done, we're moving on, that there's a maintenance and there's a continuous interaction and program to manage it. So engineers can come in as helping in with the knowledge within our own communities and within the projects which we are managing. And there's a lot of, goodwill among us. Within going to the communities and talking, even a lot of us will be involved in our neighborhood associations and giving in our advice and our input. And so this is the starting point and just needs to be more, I think it's a more sustained effort, that it's not a last-minute emergency solution, but that it's something that continues. Yeah, committee. We saw those, I think, when the El Nino El Nino was declared a few months ago. And so this are the places that the Institution of Engineers and even the EBK were happy to collaborate and lend our expertise, that we are there, that we can give early warning systems, we can discuss what can be done and what should be done on an ongoing basis and not as a last-minute emergency situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Engineer Wambulwa, is there tech available that helps in giving the communities early warning signs in terms of in the wake of such disasters?
Yes, the country has, or Kenya, we have a national disaster policy, and we have a national disaster operations center, and I think there are disaster committees at county level. So these disaster committees should be cascaded deeper up to, I think, in my view, up to sub-county and even ward level, and therefore, through that coordination and collaborating with different agencies, we can create a system for early warning. Yeah. And in that guidance, when we say people to move away from maybe flood areas, there should also be initiative how to help them to move. An alternative place to stay for that time.
In terms of enhancing or creating more awareness in terms of disaster preparedness, should we have a change of approach in terms of how we prepare people in getting ready for such disasters?
There should be an institution that has a funding that can come to work, because you could tell people to move, but they do not know move where. Yeah. So just like we have at the national level, the National Disaster Operations Center, that should be cascaded, and there is a disaster preparedness plan, maybe at ward level. And therefore, within that ward, the stakeholders there have a reasonable feel of what are the risks within our area, and therefore, responsibilities have been allocated on who does what. Yeah.
Yes.
What should the police do? What should the fire brigade do?
Yes.
What should the county government do? What is the gap that they need to resort to the national government? Yeah. Those are the issues that need to be planned.
Yes.
To the lowest level possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a civil engineer, how can engineers contribute to enhancing effective evacuation plans in such cases now where we have floods, dams are busting their banks? What is the role of civil engineering in creating these effective evacuation plans?
So, for example, for the large dams, it is common practice that we know that there are areas where, which is called the floodplain, where we know that as the water will rise, that on one day you will open up when the dam fills up, you'll open up the spillway, and the water will normally be at this level, but in that time of flood, it will rise to this level. And one way that people do is that because of that, when the water goes down, those areas are very fertile, and people like to farm in those areas. And so really, it's already part of the design and telling the people that you can farm in these areas, but don't live in this area. You need to live in the highlands or in safer areas which are designated. But then there can be farming which is seasonal, and therefore people don't need to be evacuated from homes living right next to the river, because it's just encouraging people that the rivers will burst their banks in a flood situation, that people should not live right next. That so just more education to the citizens to understand that this is the way water operates. Yeah, that living right next to the river has a consequence, and it's not, and it will happen one day that the river will overflow. Yeah.
And Mike, they say first things first. So the real first use or help of an engineer is to forecast which areas can flood. And therefore we mark out those areas, and people do not build in those areas. Yeah, that's the first.
Yeah, just follow up on Patrick. When you are doing a project, is a requirement by law that you have to do environmental impact and social assessment for the project. And when you do this, one of the things you identified, what are the impacts the project will have to the people during construction, during maintenance, and during the whole life cycle of the project. And for infrastructure like dams, you're supposed to do what we call a dam break analysis and emergency preparedness. And once you do that, there are instruments which you put early warning signs in the dam, which now this will be early warning. Number one, the water is rising up. You need to warn the community. You need to demarcate the areas which are likely to be affected. So there needs to be dissemination of information. Level 2, now we are in the stage where we must move out. But before the dam break the dam breaks itself, there are measures also which the engineers put in the system to avoid the actual breaking of the dam, because it's not something which you decide to happen. Therefore, you allow for a spillway in the dams, so that when the water reaches a certain level, you are able to raise it. Or if there's a crack which is noted somewhere in the dam embankment, before the embankment comes down, you're able to regulate that water and raise the pressure. These are the design measures that are put by engineer. But after that, it is about operations and maintenance of this infrastructure, which we have to improve on.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Good morning, Kenya. Takes a breather. Don't go too far. We'll be right back with more. All right, this is a Good Morning Kenya with me, Mike Migwi, and we are talking about disaster preparedness, especially from an engineer's perspective. Now, as we continue with this conversation, there's an upcoming convention of the engineers that is dubbed Engineers Partnership Convention that is slated for the 7th to 10th of May at Dedan Kimathi University. And Engineer David, maybe you tell us a little bit about this convention that is coming up.
Yeah, this convention is an annual event which we normally hold. This is the 5th one. And the issue here, we are going to look at the global issues that are affecting us, and then explore on how engineering can support in the giving solution to those global issues. So out of that convention, we are going to interact with the various sectors, players, from academia to the practitioners, identify where the gaps are in our training, for example, for engineers, and the practice, and see how to close that. Look at what is the gaps we have in engineering, in solving engineering solution. Basically, we are going to lobby even for more fund allocation to the engineering sector.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe Engineer Phyllis, talk about, given that you are also part of this conversation, what would you say are the biggest engineering achievements so far within the country, that is?
All right. So Kenya is unique, especially in the ongoing conversation of climate change and energy. Kenya stands out even worldwide as one of the countries where over 90% of our power is renewable. And engineers have been at the forefront of this, of harnessing this geothermal energy and other energies so over the years, and maintaining those systems which are what is serving our nation. There's also a marked improvement in terms of water supplies. This is for public infrastructure, water supply and sewerage. There's a lot, at the moment, I think the statistics stand at about 60% of the nation having access to an improved water source. this is below what we're hoping for, 100%, but there's strides which are being made forward, which we're moving in enhancing the lives of people, water and sanitation, which then affects public health and everyday life. So these are what our engineers have managed to do with the resources which are there. Again, on roads, there's a large number of roads which have been constructed, even if you look at in the last 10 years, even through the counties. If you travel to most county headquarters now, most of them will have paved roads, which is improvements from the past. Speaking of power, there have been large last mile connectivity projects which have been implemented by our own engineers here, and in most villages and in most places there's now access to power close there, even in frontier areas. Housing is an area where engineers and together with other sector players in property development have come forward. There's a huge gap in the housing sector, but there's also a lot of projects which come up, and I think there's a lot of highlighting when one building collapses, but it's also knowledge that most of us live in houses which are standing well, which have been designed adequately by engineering. By engineers in our society. So there are industries which are running. I think even in the industries running in the country and even in the region, our engineers, even in the aerospace sector, aeronautical engineers, there's even export to other airlines in the region. Especially during COVID, there was a huge migration, unfortunately, to other places in the world, the UAE of our engineers in the aerospace sector. So it shows that we have a large number, as much as the need is great, but we have the skills, we have the willingness, we are able to deliver, and there has been many strides in building our nation by the engineers here.
Given that this is a 5th convention that is happening, Engineer Wambulwa, what would you say, have they been effective in achieving the goals that you have set?
Thank you. This convention are called partnership.
Yes.
Engineering Partnership Convention. So it's an effort to bring partners in the engineering sector together so that they can discuss the issues that affect engineers and the contribution of engineering to socio-economic development. And as we go along, there is definitely increased collaboration among partners in the engineering sector. The universities, you will notice we are doing this in a university. It is the first time because the other conventions have been in hotels. But because of now increasing the partnership with universities, it's being hosted at Detan Kimathi University. What we are also going to, the 7th will be dedicated to innovation. So different people will come to showcase what they would consider innovation. And one of the reasons for choosing Dedan Kimathi is because they have a very strong department that is working on innovation in engineering. So yes, these conventions have been useful and have increased the collaboration among engineers, including international collaboration. Our partner countries in the East African community will be participating, and they have achieved preparation of a mutual recognition agreement. So if you are an engineer in East Africa, you have that flexibility to work anywhere within East Africa. And there is continued effort to scale this to the African continent before we accede to what is called Washington Accord, so that there is freedom to collaborate throughout the world. The theme of this conference is Engineering at 60 and looking at the major achievements. 60 years ago, we didn't have a university for engineering. Today, you have well over 13 producing those 2,500. If you are to be an engineer at independence, 1962, 63, 64, you had to go to Europe for your studies after high school. But today, we can do that education here up to PhD. So those are great achievements. Yes. When the universities now began, University of Nairobi, those who went in the 68, 67, the lecturers were imported from Europe. Today, if you go to the universities here, all the lecturers are Kenyan. So just as Engineer Phyllis said, we are not yet there, and there are many things yet to be done, but the Kenyan people today are consuming Kenyan engineering. Yes. If there is anything like buy Kenya, build Kenya, then we are already consuming a substantial part of Kenyan engineering. Yes. Yeah.
As we come to a close of this program, I would want to hear all your perspectives on what does the future portend in as far as climate change is concerned, and your contribution as engineers. What is the future? What does the future look like?
I think for the climate change, it starts really is not engineering. It is basically course for all of us. Yeah. It starts from where we live, what we interact with, and we start small. One of the biggest challenge is we have a lot of change in the vegetation cover. Start from where you are. Can you take advantage of this rain and plant trees in your farm, in your neighborhood, so that we are able to improve on the climate? So can you be able now to also to have some routine checks on our environment, like what is happening in Kigali? There's a day for public service. Everybody has to go and clean the streets and clog the drainage and so forth. We start small from where we live. I think that is a message to Kenyans. Yes. Thank you.
Engineer Phyllis.
The opportunity that I see now is technology and the ease of collaboration even across the world. As engineers, it is now much easier even to collaborate and even participate in studies and research even across the country, that the gap between what was called a solution in the developed world and bringing it here is much easier now. And with the advent of our education, as we've learned, and now we have the resources now and technology, we are able to localize global solutions and to bring them, to adapt them to local situations. And so with the advent of technology and the many engineers who are coming into the market from school and even those who are in the sector, there's a lot of interest and a lot of just interest in innovation and using technology to build solutions, homegrown solutions for Kenya by ourselves. Yeah.
Engineer Wambulwa.
Thank you. Our vision 2030 is to be globally competitive and a prosperous nation. For us to achieve this, we need the avenue of technology. And technology, to be state-of-the-art, requires research and development and also foresight in planning. So we need maybe to open up our horizon beyond the 2030 vision and look forward maybe another 25 or 30 years to come, and invest adequately in preparation, planning studies for different sectors, so that you do things on time. If I'm supposed to do a stormwater drain, I do it on time. My buildings, my road network is being developed on time. Technology in telecommunication, energy efficiency, EV vehicles, all these things, so that we are doing them on time. Yes. And I think we will be prosperous and competitive. And I see a big role or contribution of engineering and engineers and technologists and everybody technical.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making time to come and discuss this topic. We have been talking with Engineer Patrick Wambulwa and also Engineer David Kimingi and Engineer Phyllis Njoki here on Good Morning Kenya. This is where we cap this discussion, and don't go too far. Good Morning Kenya continues shortly. My name is Mike Migwi. Thank you for watching.